Okay, welcome everybody. Steve Roach here at ActionGrid, doing our first day of March ActionGrid overview for the week. As I mentioned always, all our phones are on mute. You can submit your questions for the Q&A at the end. This is the 20-minute version of the webinar, so we move really fast. Just show a few PowerPoint slides to help everybody understand what is ActionGrid, why did we build it. So first off, without reading this entire list, we know that list views are a major challenge in Salesforce. So a lot of things that you can't do, a lot of limitations. It sure isn't Excel, right? Secondly, the related list experience is even a larger challenge because those you can't even add your own fields, no sorting, no grouping, no editing in place, no adding in place, a 10-column limit, etc. And then lastly, Salesforce reports can do a lot of this stuff, but they lack actionability. About the only thing you can do with the Salesforce report is export to Excel. So ActionGrid is a replacement for list views, related lists, and a fully functional report writer as well. So let's demonstrate some of that. So I'm going to take a little different tact this time. I do this almost every week and vary it each time, but I'm going to do a little bit more configuration in the early part of this webinar, at least show some of this stuff. And I want to show ActionGrid as a dashboard element. So ActionGrids are always a visual force page, meaning that they're fully supported in the Lightning interface and fully supported on dashboards and as related lists and as tabs. So here I've created a nifty dashboard element to replace out my normal task management that you would see in the out-of-box dashboard. And I'm adding value here, right, because I can spin right through here, use my reading pane. You can see I have some conditional color going on, indicating that I'm overdue on a few tasks, and so on and so forth. So the second way we usually show ActionGrid is as a tab, as its own dedicated tab. Whether it be a tab like so, where I have a list of accounts, let's say, and we're using the regular kind of Salesforce paradigm, albeit a little bit different because it's an ActionGrid, but we still have the same paradigm of a list view pull down of different views of our data here, and then just some ActionGrid goodness that we'll see some more of later. But what I like to do is create an ActionGrid as a multi-tab experience. We're going to show how to do a couple of these with some wizards right at the end if we make some time. But if we show ActionGrid here and we kind of break out of that status quo, and you'll notice that we have these multiple tabs. And so what we're doing here is, instead of using the traditional list view experience, one tab, one object, one view, we're going to flip that on its side and say, you know, we're able to have different tabs be hooked to different views. Now, right now, those of you that have been longtime ActionGrid users that are watching this webinar, you'll notice that I've greatly diminished what's going on here in the grid. And that's from, I can either hide the toolbar like so, completely hide that toolbar. That's fairly new to the platform. And I can also hide all of the view configuration, because sometimes that gets too complex. And so in this case, I've done my configuration such that I've hidden my view. But if I show that view, you'll see that indeed this is just a view hooked to a tab called Open Opportunities. Or if I was to look at this one and do the same thing, you'll see the view here. I've just hidden this from the end users, but you'll see this is just opportunities this month. Okay, and of course we've got a filter here on that. So the wizard just lets you, hook views to different tabs, and you can see here that I can mix and match my tabs as well. I can have a leads queue and a task queue and whatever. It doesn't really matter. We're completely unconstrained. Both here at the tab level and at the related list level. I don't know if I mentioned it, but a lot of people want to do concepts here where they show different flavors of the same object on their related list. So active contacts and inactive contacts, open opportunities versus closed and lost, won and lost opportunities, something like that. So let's get back to our multi-tab here and just show some basic features for ActionGrid in general. So first off, you can't help but notice the color, and now since it is March 1st, the date of this, we see a lot of dirty data. This is every CEO and VP of Sales' nemesis, is the sales guy that doesn't close out his opportunities. And so you can see here, if I want to fix these, and you can even hover over the color and it'll show you the rule name. So a lot of times people are clever with their rule names, and they'll communicate a message like, hey, get in a time machine and go close that in the past, or clean it up. In this case, we've got some situations where we're not calling people, and guess what? If you don't call, you probably don't close any deals. So here with ActionGrid, we're going to just edit that right on the fly. All of our grids are always in the edit state, and we might as well move these to March 1st, or well, probably no chance of closing that on March 1st either. So March 31st, maybe we'll have a chance at that. And I could certainly do that one at a time, but I've got ActionGrid, and I'm going to use it like I would Excel. I'm going to lasso my data. Notice there, even that checkbox paradigm is away from the status quo. We're not checking boxes in ActionGrid. We're lassoing data. And in that case, I just made you, what is that, 1,000% faster. You're 11 clicks to my 1 click, so I've made that considerably faster. Now what can I do? When I lasso those rows, I'm going to take this first row that got edited, and I'm going to use the action called fill down. Fill down is what I call the poor man's mass update. It just lets you easily manipulate data right there on the fly. So I fill down. I like this method because you'll see the little red carrots there. What that allows me to do is see my data before I've committed it to the Salesforce database, in which case I can revert that, and I've undone that change. So I kind of like that method myself. So let me just redo that and show you how to actually change them. So we'll change these all to March 31st. Lasso. I can even use Control D to fill down, or Control S to save. You might have noticed me not picking up my mouse, but I Control D, Control S, and in 3 clicks, basically I've updated 11 rows of data. I can't even imagine what that would take in regular Salesforce with the regular windows popping up all over the place. So some other things you'll notice about ActionGrid, you'll notice that money columns are always summing, so you always see a summation of those. You'll see that our grids are in that Excel style filter where you can just easily check boxes instead of going through the second screen in Salesforce to define your list views. So that's very easy to do. If I wanted to do that on a date field, for instance, we support all the date operators. So this month, next month, this quarter, and so forth. So I could get that down to a this month sort of filter. Very easy. We think the bar's much lower than it is in regular Salesforce. I'm going to clear that right now. Since we've shown filters, I'm actually going to do a quick grouping exercise. So again, ActionGrid can be a report writer, so we can group this by close date, like so, and now I've got a nice little report of what's closing in what months. And notice this little anomaly here, where we've got some in the 1st of April and some in the 30th. That can be sort of annoying, if your sales reps are really indicating the actual day that they're closing deals. That's problematic for the grouping, right? So what you might want to do is go over here and add a certain field. This is how easy it is to add fields. And you'll notice with date fields and also with parental fields, as in an account is the parent of opportunities, you see these little carrots. That means you can go get more stuff. In this case, you can get fields from the account, the parent object, and in fact, you can get 5 parent objects up. So your great-grandparent and great-great-grandparent and so forth. And that adds value because you can, if you needed something from the account on your opportunity. You won't have to write a formula field for that. You could just, click in here and filter that or do whatever. So that's cross-object filtering. But I wanted to solve this date problem that I have, and that's with the close dates. So dates always have what we call the date part. So you can just, you know how you would do that in an Excel sheet. You would use a formula to do the month of that. Now I would probably group it by that. And now I'm going to have myself a nice grouping of the Marches and the Aprils and so forth. I can even do additional groupings like so and have a subgroup in there. So now within my March grouping, I've got Adam, Ryan, Shelley, and Steve here. And if I was to look at just, Ryan, you'll see I always see his subtotal in relation to the entire first outer grouping. So just some quick grouping exercises. So we want to now go on to our third way, or third or fourth, I've lost track, of how we might see an action grid, how we might interact with an action grid. And that's when we go down into the record itself. So when we go into either, we can hover over these records, and that is novel to Salesforce, bringing that in there. But what we're going to do is we're going to go down into an account record, and we'll see the use of ActionGrid as a related list. And here's that perfect example where I said I'm no longer restrained by one object, one parent object, and then one view of those objects. In this case, I've got activities, all activities, but maybe somebody, I was just on a big org the other day when their main reason for choosing ActionGrid was the inability to do filters on related lists. And of course, we no longer have that problem. And they took it one step further and wanted to just say, yeah, I could do a filter on my activities, but I don't want to even do that. I just want it to be here, right in my face, showing only my activities, and take a quick spin down through those and use my reading pane to read my email. I mean, that use case alone is probably worth everything to ActionGrid if you're importing email with Cirrus Insight or LinkPoint to do something like that. And then here's another case of multiple objects here. Now, I wanted to pause here before I normally would go into the Q&A section, because I want to show how easy this is to make. All right, so this is normally the related list experience, and just for speed on this demo, I'm going to switch to a different Salesforce system where that's not where I don't have a related list there of ActionGrid, and I'm just going to show you the actual real-time effect of that. We can still squeeze it in this 20 minutes because it takes nothing to do. So right here, like a magic trick, we have some related lists, nothing working for us here, no grouping, no 10 column limit, no editing in place, all of that. And we want to instantly transform this. So while it's not instant, it's pretty close to instant. I go to ActionGrid Setup. I go to this page layout. This is where we can make tabs, outer tabs for the tab creation, or page layout sort of interface elements. And we'll just do a quick multi-tab here. And in this case, I have multiple layouts for my system here. So I'm going to, and I would obviously have multiple, different looks of my related lists. So you have to give it a little help there. And then you just say, okay, I'm not even going to wait for it to finish. Well, I guess I'll wait because it only takes a second. It's created a visual force page. If you want, you can look at it. But really, I'm just going to go plop that down onto my page. Right here, it's going to appear as a visual force pages. That's the page we just made just a second ago. And luckily for my demo, I've already made myself a section. Right here, I'm just going to drag that bad boy right down in there, give it a little height, because Salesforce's default isn't big enough for us. Save it. And if you counted the clicks there was 2 ActionGrid clicks to make it, and then 2 Salesforce clicks to drag it into place. And all of a sudden, I've got this rich ActionGrid experience, editable rows, add in place rows, all of that goodness of an ActionGrid. Being able to add some rows very quickly like that, save them, and so forth. I realized that I did not spend much time on the related list, and so if you do allow me to, I'm going to just spend one extra second here going and articulating the use case for this reading pane concept. So you've seen me using the reading pane with email, and there's a great use case for email, imported email, but it can be used for any related list. And the idea here is that if we go down into a record, let's go with one that has a lot of data, is that we can expose all of the related list information right here in the reading pane. So the way you read this is the selected row has many opportunity products or many tasks. The reading pane also serves as a place where you can chatter right from the selected row. And then I wanted to show two new pieces of functionality here, which is being able to work and put in visual force pages right here on the grids. So normally, let's go back here. So we'll show a use case of that. And, you know, the grid's great, but sometimes not everything fits in the grid, all right? And so what you can do here is we've seen a lot of customers now that they're unlimited by the number of columns that they have, they are running out of space. And so they might create a situation where they want to put a visual force page right in this reading pane, and we support that now by going reading pane, visual force pages. In this case, I've created one ahead of time for myself called account detail, I think is what it's called. And what that is the actual little mini form of that particular row. If I go here to my Denver Broncos again, you'll see that's a fully editable form, and that's all controlled with a Salesforce field set. So you can edit that as much as you like. You know, you can add your own fields, change the order of them. Very easy to do. We're actually working on even cooler way to do that right now as well. But here's a situation. I show that way because I can also not just pass in the ID of the current row. In this case, the current row is an opportunity, but we had the use case of needing to be able to edit something about the account from the opportunity. So there's another clever use of visual force pages right there. I did want to show maybe one or two more things here because, again, because we're now unlimited with the number of columns, a lot of people are asking, well, I don't have a monitor that big. And so I can artificially create a situation, or I can just add a bunch of fields to this grid, you know, add tons of fields to this grid and get myself in a real bind with the number of fields here. And, you know, you're going to have a scroll bar, but you're going to lose your place. So what we did is we created those Excel-like features for freeze column. In addition to multi-column sort, grouping, and all of that, we also can freeze that column. So if you look here, you'll notice this column here is frozen so that when I scroll, you know, maybe I'll make this artificially narrow so that when I scroll, I don't lose my place. So that's called freeze column. So there is a question or two. Can you make a conditional color on another cell's date in relation to the current date? So example, cell is red when cell to the left is over 10 days old. Yeah, absolutely. So you can certainly do that. If I wanted to, let me clear this out here real fast. Let me reset my view. I think the question is, okay, if I have two different dates on two different date cells, okay, and I wanted to make the colors based off of each other, then the conditional formatting or a formula column, whichever one, would work. The only thing you can't do is you can't compare against rows of data, but any any value, any cell or column is fair game here. So I can compare column A, last activity, to column B, close date, very easily by just going in here to the conditional formatting, making myself a new rule here, compare to dates, something like that. And you'll see both dates are there, so I can say, whichever one is going to trigger the color. But in the advanced engine, what we do is I could say, is close date greater than the last activity date or something like that. So then I just, that's going to trigger a rule. Or what I like to do is I like to do date diffs. So subtract the close date minus the last activity date. If there's not activity in the last 10 days and you think you're going to close it, do something like that. So I can't really show those more sophisticated ones here because I'll scare everybody away, but suffice it to say that this has got really rich set of functions for date math, and I do have a date math cheat sheet if anyone needs those, but you'll find most of what you need here in date add and date subtract. That's how you would do this day minus 10 days. You could put a minus 10 into that field. Okay, I think there is one more question, and that was, can you add opportunity products from the grid? So in this case, what we have is a situation where we're on this particular row, let's say, and I think they're asking, can you add rows to related lists? And indeed you can. So you can add your own rows like so. So you can just add in place right from here as well. Of course, to go with that, can you edit in place from here? And you're absolutely able to edit in place or mass update in place. Anything like that is achievable. Oh, and then there's another one, a great question, which is, can you, sorry about that. So can you add opportunities from a grid on a contact related list? Can you add opportunities from a grid on a contact related list? I'm not following that one exactly, but let me just show some possibilities that you can do. So here I've got a list of contacts, not a related list, but one thing you can do is you can use these concepts called batch add. So I could do it this way. I can expose my reading pane, and if I have a relationship between contacts and whatever object it is, and I think the question is about opportunities, so can I add those in there? So if you do that and add opportunities, like so. So as long as there's a relationship. So in Salesforce proper, there is not a relationship, a direct relationship between contacts and opportunities. You make you'd actually have to create a relationship like I've created, but you could certainly do that and add those. Or in my case, see what I've done is I've added an opportunity.primary contact, and that is allowing me to do that. And then it also is allowing me to add opportunities. So here this guy Vaughn Miller and Shane Ray and Ronnie Hillman don't have any opportunities, but I can select those and choose batch add. Batch add. Batch add is a generic function. It allows you to add anything to anything as long as there's a Salesforce relationship. So you just say batch add opportunities. It's going to prompt you with a field set that is controlled by you, a Salesforce field set, so you can put anything you want. You say, go Broncos here, and you put some kind of type. Probably set our price book on this. I don't think any of these are required, but we'll just fill them in just for kicks and say OK. Now that's going to create 3 opportunities. I can look at them in their own grid, but since I've got this open already, we'll just take a quick spin through our reading pane, and sure enough, there's our opportunities that just got created. Can we configure which fields will show up in the batch add form? Yes, indeed. So if, for instance, I was going to batch add tasks, okay, so normally you'll maybe have to take a screen capture of this, but these are the fields that I normally have, right? And like a magic trick, we'll do it like this. We'll go over here to Salesforce Setup, and we'll just, it's all controlled with a Salesforce field set. So I've got my field sets here, and I've got my batch add field set right there. And if I wanted to rearrange those, let's just make this really ugly looking and add some other field to that, call result, something like that. I'll save that, and then we just recreate that. So that's what it looked like before. And that's what it looks like now. So I added my call result field and my description field. I changed the order of that. And there's a follow-on question to that one. We'd need different fields for different opportunity record types. Just suffice, without getting too sophisticated here on the call, let's take that one offline and just show you how you do that. What you'd really do is you'd add yourself different batch add tasks, or in your different batch add tasks you'd prompt for different record types, but we have indeed engaged with situations like that. So you can get ActionGrid. There's a free 15-day trial. Get it from the App Exchange. We'll get on a call to even help you configure it. And happy ActionGridding, everybody. Thanks for your time.